Welcome, Senator Galgiani. We're on item number 1, SB 223.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Let me begin by adopting the amendments on page 4 of the committee analysis as authors' amendments. Over the past several years, the Delta has been plagued with water hyacinth, an invasive aquatic weed that threatens the health and welfare of the Delta as it obstructs waterways and marinas, consumes valuable water resources, creates human health and safety hazards, and damages cherished natural ecosystems by crowding out native plants and wildlife. Water hyacinth floats on top of the water and creates thick, dense mats that can extend 6 feet deep into the water. It's also extremely prolific, doubling in size every 10 days in good weather. However, water hyacinth is especially challenging because of its ability to travel with tides and winds, which allows it to float freely throughout the Delta. The Division of Boating and Waterways within the Department of Parks and Recreation is the lead agency responsible for eradicating and controlling invasive aquatic plants in the Delta. The division controls water hyacinth in 3 ways: through the use of pesticides, by physical removal, or through the introduction of biological control agents such as insects that specifically attack water hyacinth. Pesticide control is the most effective control method and requires several approvals, permits, and biological opinions issued by the U.S. EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. 3 years ago, the permits were not obtained on time and pesticide spraying was delayed, which allowed water hyacinth to grow and multiply into dense, unsafe mats that blanketed and obstructed several areas of the Delta. I wish to say that the Division of Boating and Waterways has worked very closely with us and has done an excellent job working with myself, being present in the district for some hearings, and working with constituents who are seeing the impacts of this aquatic weed. And we've had some success since that time. However, the lasting effects of this era, combined with mild winters, drought, and warmer waters, has allowed water hyacinth to grow to unprecedented qualities. It's expected that we will experience one of the worst water hyacinth infestations this year, and local communities, marinas, commercial shippers, and other Delta businesses remain deeply concerned. The creation of an oversight committee composed of community members and subject area experts will work to monitor and evaluate the activities of the division and will improve public transparency and accountability of aquatic invasive weed control in the Delta. I see this as a partnership that's going to not only help the community but also help those in boating and waterways to be able to have eyes and ears on the ground to help them to understand what's happening and the areas within the Delta that need focus and attention first. With me today to testify is Greg Gibson, President of the Recreational Boaters of California. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Galgiani.
Chair and committee, I'm Greg Gibson, President of RBOC. We are a non-profit advocacy group for recreational boaters statewide and have about 80,000 boating families throughout the state. The Delta is enjoyed by our boaters every day when they can. It's being impeded right now, of course, by these invasives, which create a tremendous problem, not only for recreational boaters, but obviously the pumping plants down at the canals that complicates the whole salinity barrier issue and so forth. So we're heavily engaged in these conversations. We want to thank Senator Galgiani for taking such a tremendous role and getting this conversation going back and forth. Boaters are an independent, hard-headed bunch, and some say stubborn. I like to say perseverant. But when you give them actual facts and science, they come around and they figure it out. And Senator Galgiani's workshops, and I think this bill will go a long way to help do that. I echo her sentiment that Boating and Waterways, the Division of Boating and Waterways has really stepped up and come to the front to attack this, and we are working well with them. And incidentally, recreational boaters, not RBOC, but recreational boaters in general fund the Division of Boating and Waterways through their registration fees and fuel taxes. So we're very familiar with what they do and how they do it and are very much involved. We look at this bill as a great opportunity to enhance, encourage, and hopefully expedite the resolution of these invasive weeds. We're not going to be able to eradicate them, but we can control them. And I urge your aye vote.
Thank you for your testimony. Aye.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Karen Lang on behalf of the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors. There are a whole host of people ready to roll up their sleeves and work together on this task force. Just wanted to highlight very briefly, in addition to the recreational impacts, last fall, the mats were so thick and so deep that the big ships that come to the port, their radar was detecting these mats and thought it was land, and so they have to park out in Sassoon Bay and wait till daylight to come up because otherwise, they don't know what they're running into. And that costs tens of thousands of dollars to park a ship like that out there. So this has huge impacts on trade as well as recreation, and the Board of Supervisors can't thank the Senator enough for getting involved in this, and we urge your aye vote today. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any others in support of this bill? Is there anybody in opposition to this bill? I'll come to the committee. Senator Wolk moves the bill. Any further comments? Senator Galgiani, you've obviously brought forward an issue that is very important, and especially after hearing this testimony. My only concern is that with the advisory committee, I'm not seeing a clear objective. It seems like we know what the problem is. It seems like it may be more an issue of streamlining permits. Can you address that? Why we're not just streamlining the permits to get rid of this water hyacinth? It seems to be so troublesome.
Your point is well taken, and we agree with you. When this first came to our attention, we did continue work that was actually started by our local supervisor, and we were able to get a 5-year permit so that we wouldn't have to go back every year, and that would help the problem somewhat. But also, there are people that are landowners that have seen years where things have worked well and where it was controlled very well, and they have seen years in which it wasn't controlled well, and the differences. So there are a lot of people locally that have battled with this for so long that communication between the locals and the state will actually be very helpful, and that's the goal that we're hoping to achieve also. We have people who are past ag commissioners who are still in the community that are very, very familiar with things that have gone wrong in the past, and in a year like this year when we have a drought, that only complicates the problem because without enough water flow, the water hyacinth it's not pushed out into the salt water where it then is killed naturally by salt. So there's all of these things that people locally, they just intuitively know, and they're there and they can see the problem, and they will be a useful committee to the division as well. So it will be a two-way street.
I appreciate your comments. Today, I'm probably not going to be able to support the bill, but as I'd like to see it progress, and if we see more streamlining to getting to the knack of the problem faster, I would be open to that.
Senator, if it would be helpful for you, in the fall we met with NASA, they have an interest in this.
Huh?
There's a huge group of folks that are involved in what was discovered when you started talking to individual ones is they're doing a little bit. You got like one guy in a boat going out, but they weren't coalescing around something, and the structure she's proposing would be it would become like a forum for all these different folks with a little bit of resources to come together to nip it in the bud before the bloom really gets going. So this would almost be the mechanism, it would be the mechanism by which all these smaller entities could come together. And if you know it's in one part of the Delta, if you can get it there, that means you can stop it before it spreads. And so even though you don't live where it's showing up first, you're going to be absolutely benefited by coordinating with them. And that would be her proposal is the mechanism for that coordination.
I would also like to point out that the water hyacinth, as it grows, it consumes a lot of water, and we have a tremendous shortage, as we know. And within a 10-day period, one patch can double in size. So that means it's using a lot of water within that 10-day period, too.
Thank you. Would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you.
And the motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Senators Pavley, Stone, no, Allen, aye, Hertzberg, Hueso, Jackson, Monning, aye, Vidak, Wolk, aye.
We'll keep the roll open.
Yeah, we'll put it on call.
File number. Senator Wolk. SB 551. We're in item number 6, SB 551. Senator Wolk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, 551 will establish a new state policy which will ensure that all future state policies, regulations, and guidelines are developed in a manner that ensures water use that water use is as energy efficient as possible and energy use and generation is as water efficient as possible. According to the Energy Commission, transportation and treatment of water, treatment and disposal of wastewater, and the energy used to heat and consume water account for nearly 20% of the total electricity and 30% of non-power plant-related natural gas consumed in California. In the past, energy and water systems in California have been developed and managed independently for the most part. 551 will simply require state agencies to consciously consider the connected nature of water and energy in the stewardship of these two vital resources. I need to say that we are going to be working, we have been working with the State Water Board, looking at specific areas which we think we would like to add to this bill. If there's a substantive change to this bill, we'll bring it back. This is policy basis, and we'd like to see if we can move this whole issue forward more quickly. I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Welk. I appreciate you bringing this forward. I firmly support what you're doing. And I'll even make the motion if it expedites things. If there's any other comments, if not, if you'd like to make a close. Any opposition or support would like to come forward? Support, please come forward. Sorry, I'm just trying to expedite time here.
Andrew Grinberg, Clean Water Action and Support.
Thank you for your testimony. Sorry to rush you.
Kelly Denton on behalf of California League of Conservation Voters. We haven't put an official support in yet, but we are going to support the bill moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Olivia Regalia for Sierra Club California in support.
Thank you for your support. Any others in support? Anybody in opposition to the bill? Senator Wolk. It's been moved. Senator Wolk, any closing comments?
Yes for your aye vote.
Thank you.
The motion is due pass to appropriations. Senators Pavley, Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye. Allen. Allen, aye. Hertzberg, Hueso, Jackson, Monning. Monning, aye. Vidak, Wolk. Wolk, aye. That has 4 votes. It needs 5. We'll put it on
Leave
call.
the roll call open. Thank you. Senator Allen. We're on item number 5. We're on item number 5, SB 454.
Yes.
Senator Benau.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. SB 454 establishes criteria to protect California's precious groundwater aquifers from the waste pollution resulting from oil and gas extraction operations. So under the Safe Drinking Water Act, before DOGGR can permit an oil company to drill a wastewater disposal or chemical injection well into an aquifer, California must obtain an exemption from the act for that aquifer from the United States Environmental Protection Agency. However, as everyone knows here, DOGGR has allowed more than 2,500 wastewater disposal and chemical injection wells to be drilled into aquifers that have not been exempted from the Safe Drinking Water Act and therefore should have been protected. Now, the fluids being injected into these aquifers contain a toxic cocktail of chemicals, including benzene, arsenic, and radioactive material. Many of the chemicals are known to cause cancer and other human health problems. And the fact that some of those poisons are naturally occurring doesn't detract from the fact that they still are poisonous, carcinogenic, and dangerous. DOGGR has proposed a plan and process to examine these aquifers and seek exemptions from the Safe Drinking Water Act for those aquifers the agencies believe qualify for an exemption. Now, according to this proposed plan, DOGGR will request exemptions for aquifers that cannot, quote, reasonably be expected to be used for beneficial uses. However, the criteria DOGGR is using to make this determination does not consider California's current severe drought or the reality of future water shortages. So it's clear that going forward, given California's long-term water challenges, the state will need to access deeper aquifers and adopt technology necessary to develop water we might not consider feasible today. Technology that may still be in development or still in conceptualization phase. Given the current water crisis, I strongly believe that it's both irresponsible and short-sighted to not protect an aquifer, even if today it's not being used for drinking, or today we don't consider it easily accessible for drinking. So this bill, SB 454, requires DOGGR to work jointly with the State Water Resources Control Board and put specific criteria in place to guide DOGGR and the board in determining which of California's protected aquifers should be eligible for consideration for an exemption under the Safe Drinking Water Act, bearing in mind whether or not the aquifer should be maintained as a future water supply, given the critical need to develop new water sources. Under SB 454, for hydrocarbon-bearing aquifers, the agencies must ensure the aquifer is geographically isolated, so discharged water cannot contaminate nearby aquifers. Also, any discharge into the aquifer cannot negatively impact any potential beneficial uses of the water in the aquifer. And for non-hydrocarbon-bearing aquifers, the total dissolved solids content of the water in the aquifer cannot be below 3,000 milligrams per liter. The aquifer must be geographically isolated, and the board must determine that the injection of discharged water will not contaminate a source of water that is current or potential future beneficial use. Given the critical drought the state is facing, given the fact that our water challenges will almost certainly be long-term in their duration, we simply don't have the luxury to be short-sighted when determining which of our water resources should be protected. SB 454 ensures California's future water needs are considered when determining the appropriate location for oil and gas production and wastewater wells. With me today, I have Andrew Greenberg from Clean Water Action and Bill Alayud with Environment California to speak in support and assist in answering any questions the panel may have.
Thank you, Senator Allen.
I'm Bill Alio with the Environmental Working Group in support. I think you're going to hear the opposition say this bill isn't needed because DOGGR and the State Water Board have a new memorandum of understanding. The gears are in motion because of Senator Pavley's SB 4, and they're on top of this underground injection control problem. We disagree. We think that DOGGR needs more structure, and it's appropriate for the legislature to step in and say, we're going to help tell you what rules we think are needed to protect California's resources and water. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Andrew Greenberg with Clean Water Action. I'll also keep my comments short, as this committee knows as well as anyone else in the building this issue. It's clear that the underground injection control program is in dire need of reform. Deciding which aquifers we're going to write off for the oil and gas industry to pump their fluids into is of the utmost concern considering our water situation here. Bringing in the water experts at the State Water Board is a logical next step. And as Senator Allen mentioned, having the long-term view of which aquifers may be beneficial in the future is absolutely the correct approach to take. We strongly support and urge your aye vote.
Thank you for your testimony. Any others in support of the bill at this time? Welcome.
Kelly Denton on behalf of California League Conservation Voters in support.
Thank you.
Amy Trainer with the Westburn Environmental Action Committee in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Olivia Regalia with Sierra Club California in support.
Thank you for your testimony. Any others in support of SB 454 come forward at this time? If not, I'm going to call upon the opposition.
Mr. Chairman and members, Eloy Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association here in opposition. I guess I'd like to thank Mr. Alayud for giving our testimony for us, since we've been doing this a couple of times in a couple of committees already, including this committee, I think, a week or two ago. I will say that an ongoing concern for us with regard to all of these pieces of legislation on UIC is, can we reconcile them with the actions that are being taken right now in a real time by the administration? Governor Brown's Department of Conservation, Division of Oil and Gas, and the State Water Resource Control Board have jointly submitted a comprehensive corrective action plan to US EPA, which has been accepted by US EPA, which does include the water experts that the proponents spoke about, And it will deal with the water well evaluations by May and July of this year, with well shut-ins if necessary by October and December of this year, has a proposed aquifer exemption process that will address going forward any documentation issues that have arisen. So we asked the question, how are those actions and this bill or any subsequent bill that would take effect in January of next year would involve a regulatory process that would take another year or two to address a so-called emergency? How are those actions reconciled? If we are legitimately concerned about ensuring that we have that we protect freshwater aquifers, then we should focus on fresh groundwater aquifers. We're proposing to do an extraordinary amount of work on oil field aquifers and oil fields that will duplicate the actions that are being taken right now by the water experts at the Water Resources Control Board. For that reason, we oppose the bill and would encourage you to ask the question, how are these actions in legislation and in ongoing regulatory actions, how are they reconciled? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. P. Anthony Thomas, representing the California Independent Petroleum Association. First, the author mentioned that there were 2,500 wells that were negatively injected. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. That is not true. That did not happen. Not 2,500 wells. And if that is the case, I'd like to see the evidence of that. My understanding, my clear understanding is that there were 12 wells that were shut in. 10 of those wells were voluntary by the industry. So I just wanted to make that point. The question we have about SB 454 is, what is the purpose? Now, I know there was a stated purpose, but what is the purpose of this bill? As you read the entire bill, the actual piece of legislation, it does nothing that provides additional protection that is contained in that is already contained in the state work plan. The Water Board is my counterpart referred to, and is actively and expeditiously putting in place an updated exemption, submittal, and review process. So again, we ask, what is the purpose of this piece of legislation? In Section 1, 3113, lines 3 through 7, Section 1, 3113, lines 3 through 7, says that the division cannot submit a proposal for an aquifer exemption to EPA unless Dogger and the Water Board concur, which is a requirement currently of the state plan as well. But the bill does not address or even answer what happens to that aquifer or aquifers in question if there is a disagreement. The bill sets no timeline. It doesn't set a deadline for when the agencies need to come to a determination. And the term beneficial use is used in the bill at least 6 times, but there's no definition of what beneficial use is. When SB 4 passed, it put in place the first of its kind in this nation, a regulatory paradigm that is now currently being implemented. The UIC program has now become the new political football to implicate the oil and gas industry as not only attentive to and caring about the same water that all of Californians use, but it's an indictment that an industry would dare to contaminate the same water that our families use just as yours. I asked, have the sponsors actually interface with either agency since they referred to the agencies needing direction? Where is their input on the bill? I see none. The bill lacks depth, direction, and substance. Given a comprehensive plan that Dogger and the Water Board are undertaking, this bill does nothing to add safety nor support additional vetting of aquifer exemptions. From a policy standpoint, members, from a policy standpoint, this bill is weak and it should be held in committee, and we would urge a no vote.
Thank you for your testimony. Any others in opposition at this time? Seeing none. Committee members.
Be glad to move the bill.
Okay, Senator Wolk moves the bill. I'll make just a few comments. I know that Dogger has recently entered into an agreement with EPA to become compliant with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, which may make the bill unnecessary. I'm concerned about the verbiage beneficial use, I think that could be applied to virtually any well that is potentially going to be using water fracturing for oil production. So I'm concerned that that this bill is basically going to be the end-all, if you will, to steam injection, which is creating a lot of jobs, creating energy independence, and I've sit in a number of these committees, and it seems as though that this industry is a target. I do appreciate my friend Senator Allen for bringing this forward. I think we all want to make sure that we have clean water. But frankly, there are wells out there that just due to natural circumstances have benzene, have dissolved water solids. And I think it's very difficult for the legislature to be basically fortune tellers, to understand that while this water is not potable today for utilization, and maybe in 20 years when we have technology that may be able to extract all these hazardous materials from this water. But I think that, you know, this is just another attempt at this time to basically put steam, fracking, utilization of our natural resources basically out of business. There was a talk of the 23 wells that were out of the 50,000 that were put down. 12 of them, or 10 of them were, 12 are shut down, 10 were voluntary. But after examination of these wells, they found out that there was not one issue of contamination. That doesn't mean that the agency doesn't have its problems, because it seems very clear that there might have been a lack of oversight. But it seems as though this may be, in my view, a little bit overreaching with the definition of beneficial use that really could jeopardize the existing steam fracturing that's going on and limit future fracturing in the future. And those are my concerns, Senator. I'll certainly let you respond, and you can close if you like.
Yeah, no, I understand them, and you know that I respect you a great deal, Senator, and I think ultimately it's another one of these difficult balancing tests that we've been struggling with all morning. I think that the core concern that motivates our involvement in this bill is the impact on current and future water supplies. And I understand that it's aggressive, purposefully so, because of the severity of the drought and the fact that there's no end in sight in terms of long-term projections. And I think I'm looking at this as a way of helping to not worsen future generations' access to water as the drought worsens and as technology improves. I get your concerns, and I heard the testimony of the gentleman who spoke in opposition, and I want to meet with them and talk a little bit more. I'm sure we're never going to come to a completely same page on this, but I do think that there are a couple things that they mentioned that I think we can change a little bit to make it a little bit more palatable to them, while still not compromising the core motivation here, which is about protecting water and understanding the long-term needs of the state with regards to water, and not having future generations curse us for not having taken reasonable precautions to protect those aquifers that they're going to need to access. So with that, I very respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Just had one question. I apologize. This may be there, so I'm so sorry, Senator, but is there any timeline in all of this? What worries me is that we so often in government add all these processes to say all this stuff's important, but there's no end game, and so it gets caught in bureaucratic nightmare of stuff. Is there any timeline on this stuff?
Well, in terms of, I mean,
Basically, what you're saying is the aquifer exemption for drilling is only granted if the DOGGR and the original the board also agrees in writing that it meets certain criteria. Do they have a timeline to do that? Or does this just mean they can delay forever? Because what happens, you've added a roadblock into the process. I don't care. I think their review is critical. What I'm just worried about is you add another layer without counterbalancing that with some level of reality. You know, I can't tell you how many stories I hear about these delays and for a bunch of reasons, and it's the reason people are frustrated with government. Our objective is legitimate, but our approach to it is maddening.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, especially, now, of course, in this case, the rules, as we all discussed before, were the opposite problem, right? That if the government didn't respond within about 10 days, the project could go forward.
Right.
And that basically meant that they weren't putting a stop to any of these, of this work, some of which ended up proving damaging. So I would be fine with putting in some sort of.
Look, I trust you. I want you to think about it. I just think as we deliberate as legislators that we need to put this stuff on the table, do what you deem appropriate. I don't want to hold you up on it, but I just think that it's just.
I get it.
Just a part of the larger dynamic as you move forward with your measure.
I bet on this issue we could find a reasonable.
I have no specifics. I just want to try to be sensitive to government because we do important stuff, but we get a bad name because we don't do it in a way that works as well as it should.
Right, and I don't think we don't want to replace one timeline problem with the opposite.
I have no problem with that.
Timeline problem.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
If I may, if I may just add, I believe that there is some kind of agreement between a memorandum of understanding that exists already between the board and Dogger in terms of how quickly to respond. So you might want to look at that and see if it answers the question.
Okay.
Thank you. If you'll call the roll.
Motion is due pass to environmental quality. Senators Pavley, Stone, no. Allen.
Aye.
Allen, aye. Hertzberg. Hertzberg, aye. Hueso, Jackson, Monning, aye. Vidak, Wolk. Wolk, aye. That vote is 4-1. You need one more. We'll put it on call.
Keep the roll open. Thank you. Okay. So we see Senator McGuire. Item number 10, SB 788. Senator.